Right, so with that started, we will go ahead and begin the presentation today. So in the presentation today, I'll cover a couple different aspects. I will talk about who the Apparel Impact Institute is, our 2021 programming overview, ranging from our overview and some results, existing cohorts, roles and responsibilities, and key dates and next step for those who might be interested in participating in some of the Institute's programming. I will leave time at the end for any questions, but I will be monitoring the chat feature throughout the presentation. So if you do have a question in real time, please feel free to submit that to me and I'll do my best to answer that as I'm presenting. Otherwise, go ahead and submit those questions at the end and we'll cover them. So the Apparel Impact Institute was founded back in 2017 with a few different critical aspects to the work that we do, looking at 4 different what we call buckets or areas. The first is about identifying, the second is around funding, the third is around the idea of scale, and the fourth is around measuring. So first and foremost at the Institute, we look to identify and validate the best teams, initiatives, or market opportunities to deliver scale and impact. We believe that collaboration is a critical and necessary component to the work to improve the apparel or footwear sector. And so we don't believe in creating programs that are going to be duplicate, that are maybe going to be repetitive, that are going to be things that the marketplace just doesn't need. We want to be able to identify and support those best-in-class initiatives already out there to drive impact at scale. Second, as it relates to the funding aspect of the organization, the Apparel Impact Institute is a 501c3 organization. So we have funding from a diverse source that we're able to deploy and fund programs around the world. So first, we receive funding from apparel or footwear brands. Second, we receive money from the suppliers that we do work with. And then last but not least, we have what we call philanthropic partners. So that could be anything from a government development organization, a family foundation, or even some of the companies that we work with have a philanthropic arm that contributes money to the Apparel Impact Institute as well. So by using this funding, we have a unique aspect, again, to deploy that money in a different way with our 501c3 status. As it relates to scale, we look at using methodologies or principles in an effort to drive scale at impact. And so if we think about identifying the programs, again, if we believe in collaboration, how do we then deploy, whether it's funding or the necessary resources to scale impact as it relates to climate change, water scarcity, or some of the key environmental issues that are part of the footwear sector? We then take that effort to drive the change and drive scale needed for the industry. And last but not least, when we look at measuring the work that we do, we know that data is critical to be able to validate, improve the work that we do and stand behind the efforts that we're driving, again, to look at impact for climate change, water scarcity, or use of chemicals. As it relates to the work that we do, we have 4 key critical focus areas for the Apparel Impact Institute. The first is around energy, so looking at whether it's energy efficiency or renewable energy. Next, as it relates to water, we're looking at reductions in water, whether it's the process efficiencies or production innovations. Chemistry, how can we eliminate or reduce the use of hazardous chemicals in production? And then last but not least, materials, looking at different material choices, innovation, product design, or circularity as it relates to the choice of materials. So these are the 4 key focus areas of the work that we do globally around the world. So if we think then about the work that we do, why we do it, there's a couple different components that are important to the work. On the top left of the screen, you'll see this idea of industry focus. So again, we believe in collaboration, or what we call collective action. So we know that a number of different brands or suppliers around the world all have different goals. Some are science-based targets, some are simply focused on climate change or water reduction. So if we know these goals exist, how can we then drive collective action for the industry to achieve the impact that we want to see in the world? On the bottom left, there's impactful programming. So this again is about how can we scale the necessary programs that exist in the world to drive impact by looking at different methodologies that we can then vet, work with other experts around the world, and identify those potential new spaces that are quickly evolving in the industry. And then last but not least, again, I talked about this briefly, this idea of funding. So as it relates to aggregated funding as a 501c3, again, we have access to philanthropic or government funds that allow us to potentially focus on innovation, de-risking pilots or new methodologies, and really accelerating the program adoption and the impact that we can have on behalf of the industry. And then the second component is industry funds. So the likes of both the brands or suppliers that we work with provide funding to help us develop or support innovation and pilots that we're seeking, and look at driving funding for proven programs such as Clean by Design, which I will talk here about momentarily. Another way to think about the work that we do at the Apparel Impact Institute is across 4 different buckets of work, which include pre-seed, pilot, model, and scale, but also then using some methodologies that I talked about earlier. So we identify and validate, fund, scale, and measure. And I'm not going to read through all of the things on the screen here, but I'll pause for a moment just to allow you to look. But basically what this is saying is, as it relates to some pre-seed activities, how do we identify and validate maybe existing needs for the industry? Then in the pilot methodology, we'll test or we'll create and then refine things that we've learned. As it relates to model, then we'll engage and hopefully recruit and nominate more suppliers to participate in the work. And last but not least, then driving that scale. So that's a simplified way to think about this slide with a ton of details and information that, again, I'm not going to read. I'll just pause for a moment to allow you to look at the screen. And then moving on, an important aspect and some exciting components to the work that we have as an organization, we talk about this ecosystem partnership that the Apparel Impact Institute has with both the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and HIGCO. So as it relates to the work, if you think about Sustainable Apparel Coalition, they're the convener of the membership-based organization for a number of large apparel and footwear sector brands and suppliers. HIGCO, they are the technology arm behind the different modules, whether it's the FEM, this FSLM, or different components that brands are using to collect data and information. We then, as the Apparel Impact Institute, through this ecosystem of partners, have access to, excuse me, have access to HIGCO information that we can then run high-level reports, different ways to look at the information to determine where should some impact programming be. So for example, if we wanted to look at some of the HIGCO data and run it based on a country, we can then determine maybe what countries have the highest emissions. Within that country, then what suppliers might be the best to engage in support for emissions reduction strategies. So the HIG information allows us to run some insights in different analytics to be able to determine, again, where might we want to focus our programming as an institute on behalf of the industry. Then to conduct our work, some exciting things that I thought I'd share today include the different key partners that we have. So on the top left, you see founding and strategic partners. So the Institute was founded back in 2017. These organizations then provided initial funding along with strategic support throughout the years and continue to support the Institute with both funding and different strategic insights to help us make sure we're heading in the right direction and offering important and necessary programming for the industry. On the top right, you see programmatic partners. This is a sample of, not all inclusive of, a number of the different brands that we work with around the world. We have many more behind the scenes, but because of legal NDAs and different documents, we have limited who we are talking about here today. And then on the bottom, I mentioned earlier, as a 501c3, we have access to philanthropic partners that range from government development organizations to family foundations, and then also different corporate funders such as HSBC in this case, who is a large global bank, also provides us some philanthropic support. With all of that being said, I've covered a little bit about who the Apparel Impact Institute is, and now I'm going to shift the conversation in to more about the different programs that the Institute offers and potentially ways to get involved as a supplier in the work that we're doing. Before I get too far into some of the different program offerings, I thought I'd share an overview of the different ways that we approach our programs. And so first and foremost, we have what we call our programming model. And this serves as the foundation for how all of our cohort-based work is managed and overseen around the world. And so it's important to note that, again, this is for our cohort-based work, such as Clean by Design, this methodology here. And so it happens over a 12 to 18 month cohort-based model. In 12 to 18 months is a key component that I'm going to talk a little bit about and why the time frame is 12 to 18 months. But before I do that, what's exciting about this model that you see on the screen here is there's 4 key stakeholders who are part of the work. So first, the Apparel Impact Institute is a key stakeholder. Next, the facility or supplier, which would be those on the call today, supported by the brand, who would be the third stakeholder. And then last but not least, we have third-party technical experts that we hire and retain to consult and advise the supplier or the facility in this case on the different ways to drive energy, water, and basically climate change and chemical reductions as it relates to their operations. So first and foremost, in this model here, you see on the screen, both opportunity and results assessment and benchmarking KPIs occur with information provided by the facility, whether that is energy or utility bills, in addition to if HIG information or the HIG FEM module results are available, we're able to use those too, and then determine or predict out what could be some of the potential impacts or results a facility could expect to see by participating in the program. And then what happens is once that work is done, we assign a third-party technical expert to advise and consult to the facility. And so they'll conduct an on-site visit to then spend about a day, depending upon the program, anywhere from 1 to 3 days on site, assessing and determining different opportunities in conversation with the facility staff, whether it's an operations manager or production manager, just becoming aware of the different opportunities, looking at equipment, understanding how the manufacturing facility produces the clothing and different things as relates to production. After that site visit's complete, they've put together a report and a summary of observations that then is provided to the facility, who can review that report and then head into what we have on the screen here for learning and workshops. So the aspects here as it relates to learning, we have a number of online e-learning modules that we make available to the facility as they participate through the program to train them in a number of different areas across best practices. In addition, as part of the cohort-based work, we conduct workshops that brings all the different key stakeholders, the facility, the brands, the experts, and the institute together to offer up day-long learning sessions in person traditionally. However, because of the pandemic over the last year and a half, we've shifted all of these different learning sessions and the workshops to remote via webinar. Once the facility completes all of those activities, they go into the next phase around focused on a prioritized action plan. This is where the facility puts together their own list of different things they'd like to improve upon in consultation and guidance from the expert third-party consultant that's hired. And then once that action plan is complete, they go into what's called the project implementation phase. And traditionally what we've seen is anywhere from 10 to 15 different action items are in the plan. However, the facility will typically implement about 6 of the 10 to 15 things on the list. This project implementation phase, we allow around 8 months to complete, 6 to 8 months, because we know as a supplier doing production, there's a number of variables, whether it's time of year, seasonality, access to capital, funding, things that just make it a little bit more difficult to implement things right away. And so we allow 6 to 8 months for the facility to complete those different implementations, so we're not interrupting or changing any potential production schedules as it relates to the operations of the facility. Once the implementations are done, the third-party technical expert will return and do a last site visit just to ensure that what the facility said they were going to implement or install was done, and just to determine that the calculations are real. And then we close it out by providing a certificate in addition to a closeout event that we have usually once or twice a year to recognize all facilities' participation through, again, our cohort-based model that you see on the screen here. If we shift now a little bit of the conversation into the different program offerings. So again, what you're going to see on the slide here is typically our cohort-based work, where it starts with our wet processing energy and water efficiency. So Clean by Design Tier 2. This is a mill improvement program that looks at scalable best practices for achieving energy and water reduction. In addition to our Clean by Design traditional program, we also offer a program called Clean by Design Plus. This is intended for those facilities that have completed either Clean by Design or a similar mill improvement program that can demonstrate results and also want to then take the work that they're doing to the next level, allowing them deeper insights, more time with the experts. They work on setting different supply chain related goals for energy or water reduction that are more than a 1 year time frame, but typically 3 to 5 years. And so it's a deeper level program. The insights are going to be a little bit more robust. They're going to have more time with the technical expert to allow them to go deeper beyond just the traditional 10 best practices. So that's our Clean by Design Plus program. In addition to that, we have what we call non-wet processing energy efficiency, or focused on a Tier 1 facility. So our wet processing energy and water is really a Tier 2 level program where there's significant thermal energy and water consumption on site for dyeing activity. Our non-wet processing energy efficiency program is really a Tier 1, focused on cut and sew, finished goods assembly, or footwear facilities where there's not a significant amount of thermal energy consumed or a lot of water used. It's traditionally just energy consumption related to different machines like a sewing machine or a cutting machine. Next, we have what we call our chemistry program. So this is looking at best practices and procedures for improving inputs and reducing chemical use within an actual facility, compared to maybe a lot of times you've heard restricted substances lists or things along those lines that are really focused on what's in the different materials. Whereas here, we're looking at the use of that within the actual facility itself. I see there's a question. Bear with me a second. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. I'm going to pull this over. So as it relates to real cases with KPIs, metrics, investments deployed, coming up, I do have a couple examples of different things that we can share. I also do have some slides that we can provide after the presentation. They're going to be much more focused in deeper actual case studies. And if you would like, I can also provide this link to you via email. So I have your contact information through registration today, so I can ensure that you do have a document. It's about 50 pages with deep, robust, real case studies. I don't have the slides for that today, but it is a document that's readily and easily available that I can send via email. All right, so as I mentioned, talking briefly about some of the results to date. Oops. Another question, hang on a second. So then as it relates to the program facilities can apply to, or rather a Hague conducted data mining, no, the answer is that typically what happens is a facility or a supplier can self-nominate to join. So just by contacting the Apparel Impact Institute myself, or usually a lot of brand partners that we have will nominate their suppliers. So some of the brands that I shared a picture of earlier in the presentation, they would nominate or contact the supplier and recommend participation in the Apparel Impact Institute programming. And then the average payback period, I will cover that here in just a moment. And so what you see on the screen is anywhere from about 10 to 13% average reductions. And this is a sample set of over about 165 facilities. So 10.5% energy reduction, 10% greenhouse gas emissions reduction, 13% water. And then what you see here on the screen is 14.2, the average payback period. That is months. And so this is just a little over 1 year in a payback period for all the investments that the facility makes. And then on the bottom right, you see here over 1,000 action items implemented. That gives you an idea of how many different items or different things the facility has done to implement to save energy, water, or reduce chemistry. And then I see the last question here. Is there some connection to good fashion fun? I believe the answer to that is yes. We have a number of different partnerships globally and work on a number of initiatives in partnership with those different organizations, share information, share learnings, but then also as it relates to potential funding opportunities as well. And so I believe we work closely with the Good Fashion Fund. On the screen here, what I share now is a little bit of information about some of the existing cohorts, just to give you an example of some of the different programs that we have going on right now. And so as you see on the screen, both 2019 summer mainland China and Taiwan, those regions have been completed. But what you see there is a number both 25 and 7. Those are how many facilities were in each cohort. And what you can see all the way through the presentation on the slide here is the different cohorts and locations coupled with the different phases and or number of facilities that are involved in programming. And so I mentioned about 165 to 200 facilities have completed programming to date. And you can see a number of those facilities are still in flight or in programming to continue that evolution. So hopefully by this time next year, we'll have almost 350 plus facilities through all of our programming. So again, that'll include both Clean by Design and our carbon leadership work, which I'll share a little bit about here momentarily. Hang on, there's one more question. Yes, we're always happy to share more of our work with any organization who would like to know. So we're always looking to expand. We currently operate in mainland China, Taiwan, India, Pakistan. We're looking at Bangladesh coming on here, hopefully within the next year. We have work in both South Korea and Italy as well. So a pretty robust country presence, but are most definitely always interested in sharing more in addition to ways that we are able to expand our work. So happy to do additional presentations and connections to support the work. As it relates to some new and exciting things that we have here within 2021, there's 3 different projects that I'd like to share. So there's the Carbon Leadership Project that I mentioned. So this is focused on how do we use some benchmarking and insights to then put together a specific custom baseline target and action plan for a facility to reduce carbon and water. Next, we have a renewable energy pilot that we're doing in partnership with both CEIA and IDH within Vietnam, looking at a group procurement process. So we're excited that that project has started. However, we're a little bit cautious in aware of the current pandemic situation in Vietnam. So we're hopeful that between now and the end of the year, we'll have a number of facilities engaged in different renewable energy technologies for a group power purchase agreement. Last but not least, we have a new pilot concept that we're working on. This is looking at what we're calling Clean by Design and new construction. So a lot of the work that we've talked about to date, this is all focused on existing facilities and operations. We're doing a pilot with a brand and supplier in mainland China, focused on how can we help design sustainable factories, whether it's looking at process efficiencies, optimize layout, and then also setting performance and sustainability goals for those organizations, potentially both a brand or facility who would like more insights, but as they're looking to build or construct a new facility. So those 3 programs are all offered this year as well, in addition to our Clean by Design work, and looking to recruit different suppliers and brands to participate. On the slide here, I figured I'll provide a little bit more insights into then what is the carbon leadership model. So the model that I shared previously was for Clean by Design. And what you see on the screen here, I apologize, it's a little bit messy, but this is our carbon leadership model, which again, as I mentioned, if the outcome and the end goal is looking at baseline, target, and action plans, the idea and the reason that we developed this was in partnership with 8 brands and 50 facilities who had an interest and a desire to really work together to set their different action plans as related to climate change. And they just didn't feel as if they necessarily had the right support, or they had already done things, they being the supplier, and weren't getting credit or support for the work that they were doing. And so our approach in partnership with Reset Carbon was to develop a number of different tools and resources throughout this work. So first and foremost, the benchmarking phase that you then see on the left here, our AII Carbon Tech Assessment, is a simplified, what's currently an Excel-based questionnaire. It should take about 2 hours for a operations manager or facility engineer to complete. It asks a lot of similar, maybe high-level questions that you would see in HIG, but they're more specific to ensure that we're able to then do some calculations and assessments of the facility's performance to provide them a type. And what we mean here when we talk about type 1, type 2, and type 3, this is looking at level of effort or what they've done to date. So whether it's least mature, meaning that there's going to be more resources or time required to complete the baseline, target, and action plan process, or type 3, meaning that they're most mature and they've done a lot already and they can advance through this entire model, much faster than a type 1 facility. What's exciting about the Carbon Tech Assessment is we're in early conversations to move this from an Excel-based questionnaire to a module that is supported with the HIG FEM module. So making it available through HIG. So there's again the ecosystem partnership at work. Then as it relates to the different carbon reduction assessments and capacity building opportunities, dependent upon the score or the rank of the facility, they go through this and then we provide them custom and specific training or workshops based on their needs, which range from topics of renewable energy, energy efficiency, boiler and process efficiency, and then clean fuels. And so all of those different training modules are part of this work. And there's a key difference here if you think about Clean by Design versus Carbon Leadership Program. The benchmarking Carbon Tech Assessment is intended to take about a month to a month and a half to complete. And the rest of the training, goal setting activities are usually going to take about 5 months. And so usually within 6 months, this entire model can be completed and then allow then the supplier to have a complete baseline, target, and action plan that they can share with the different brands that are procuring product from them. And so we're very excited about this. It started out as a 8 brand, 50 facility test. And at that point, we've significantly grown the work. We have over 215 facilities currently going through carbon tech assessments, and then about 65 of those facilities are currently working through the reduction assessment capacity building opportunities. And so there's a question here, is the Climate Leadership Program connected with GIZ's fashion action? Yes, we're in close conversation, with a number of organizations, including GIZ, and in conversation about how we can potentially work together or make this available as part of those training sessions. So this is a very close conversation that we're having with GIZ. And then in terms of a possibility to preview the training materials, I think that's something that we're working to develop right now. So they're all in pilot phase. And so those facilities that we've worked with, those 50, have access to all of the different training materials and they're able to provide that feedback. I think we would look to potentially open up an opportunity for more review later this year, early next year, once we've completed at least the pilot phase for those 65 facilities based on their learnings and their insights. Is again, this right now actually is intended to be a pilot and a test, but is scaled up pretty significant based on interest and demand. And so following our process, I anticipate probably end of this year, early next year, an opportunity to preview some of the different materials. And if we move on, now I thought it'd be worthwhile to just cover some key dates on timing and action for 2021. So currently we are already working with our brand partners. So back in July, we started brand recruiting with a number of the brands that you saw on the prior slide, having conversations with them. And now they're starting to have conversations with their suppliers. So through August and September, they're interested in conversations with suppliers to talk about different programming opportunities, understanding where the brand might like the supplier to get involved. And so by September, we're looking to have all of our brand partnerships finalized. What's key importance dates now then for the rest of the presentation and those on the call is this October 7th timeframe. So that's when we're looking at our facility commitment letters due. And that's basically a simplified letter that requires a company stamp that says the facility is committed to the programming and they're willing to participate, pay the program fee, but then also ensure they complete the trainings on time, ensure that they're taking care of the different action items or implementations that are part of the different work streams. October 21st is when we're looking at actually launching the fall cohort. So I'll cover what programs and what locations, but just know October 21st of this year is currently when we plan to launch the different programs that we have coming up. That being said, this is important to know that this is depending upon the pandemic situation. So as it relates to the work today, October 21st is our best guess. However, we'll monitor closely different country situations and constraints that might exist. And then last but not least, we're hopeful to then begin our technical expert first site visits for the different activities that will be happening around November, December of this year. On the screen here, what you see then is an overview of each of the different programs based on the country where we will offer that program. So the countries currently will be mainland China, Taiwan, India, Vietnam, and Pakistan. Clean by Design, our traditional 10 best practices program, that will be offered in all the countries that you see on the screen. Clean by Design Plus will only be offered in 3 of them. Clean by Design Tier 1 will be offered in 2 of them. And then chemistry and wastewater will also be offered into both mainland China and India in this case. So all of these, again, will start October 21st of this year. One thing I didn't mention is there are also network locations, as we call them. So South Korea, Bangladesh, Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia, Cambodia, and the United States are all where we can offer programming. We just need a little bit more lead time if a supplier is interested in any of those opportunities to get involved in that country. Some key roles and responsibilities as it relates to the different work for the 2 stakeholders, both the brand and the facility. So for our brand partners, we ask that they recruit, enroll, and work with the different suppliers throughout the program, pay the sponsorship fee, provide support to the Institute throughout the program. And then as it relates to the facility, some of the key responsibilities that we ask throughout the work is to create a project committee led by an executive leader. So typically we like to see 3 to 5 different team members from the facility. We want to allow the experts access to the facility, but we do know that given the current pandemic, there are certain restrictions or requirements suppliers are implementing. We're happy to abide by and support any and all of those decisions, whether it's doing a remote visit, whether it's wearing a mask on site, any of those things we're able to do and abide by and support the supplier in that. We ask that you participate in the different workshops and training sessions, develop and submit the action plan, and then also the final report. And so those are the 2 key aspects, is having the action plan submitted, and then also the final report and continuing to maintain effort throughout the life of the program, which again, typically is about 12 months. I would say overall, as it relates to general timing, it's really hard to give an estimate of how many hours a team member at this facility might spend on the work. We do know though, however, the more engaged the supplier is, the better the outcomes will be. And so that's why, again, we ask for a committee with an executive leader and 3 to 5 different team members to make sure that people are maintaining involvement. As it relates to the different costing opportunities here, this is a sample of the different costing based on program fees. So you see both brand and facility. In the third column, the available match. This is where our philanthropic partners have identified where they're willing to participate and support the work in more of a scaled phase. And so a lot of times our philanthropic partners support us with a lot of pilot or pre-seed, as we referred to it earlier in the work, the different aspects. And so the total price is the far right column, just to give you an idea based on country, based on program here on the screen. One important note as it relates to the carbon leadership, what you see on the screen here is going to be the total program price. Because that still is in the pilot methodology and we haven't officially moved from what we call pilot to program, we're still exploring what the cost methodology for the work might be. A lot of times the brand partners that we have been willing to pay for the carbon tech assessment and then look at some sort of a cost share for the remaining program fees or costs with the supplier. So I don't want to commit to that being the plan long-term. Just know that this is the total program price. How then that might get covered between a brand and a supplier is up to each of those individual conversations. So we just felt best to include the overall cost, not a breakdown on how the costing model works. And then as it relates to what you see on the screen here, we are happy to work with and engage with a brand one-on-one. There is, or I'm sorry, a supplier one-on-one. There is no need to work directly with a brand nomination. If a supplier does want to get involved, over the last year, we've probably had about 10 to 12 suppliers come to us asking to work with us individually one-on-one. And what we're able to do then is based on the partnerships that we have, if we know who you source to or supply to as a supplier, we can then potentially connect back with the brands who provide us funding as a way to get involved and share in an effort for collaboration and nominations. And so we're flexible and we're able to work in a number of different ways. And then in terms of the different pilot projects that we have going on right now, an informed choice matrix, that's something that we're in development to create right now. As part of the carbon leadership work more specifically, there is a document that will be available that then outlines the different initiatives or action items, projected costs or ways to really help the suppliers understand what some of the cost initiatives might be, what some of the action items could be, and then how to potentially approach those. So for example, if you've already spent time on energy efficiency initiatives, we could make recommendations on potential renewable energy costs, or if you know that coal phase out is a big opportunity, then we're able to support those initiatives as well. So it really just depends on how they want to go about this work. So with that, I'm going to just shift to the last slide. I see that there's a number of questions coming in. And so just for those on the call now, please, if you have any questions, submit those. This is the time. I'm monitoring the question and answer feature. Have been answering to my best throughout the presentation, those that have come in, but I do see there's a few more here. So please submit your questions and then I'll continue to answer them. So with that, another question here is, what might make a supplier want to be involved on their own and not pushed by any brands to be involved? A lot of times what we see in this case when brands want to, suppliers want to get involved with the work, it's really because they see a great market opportunity or a need for them. They traditionally hear from a lot of their different brand partners, hey, it'd be great if you did this initiative. But what they've determined is, as it relates to their company leadership, the leaders are supportive of and want the supplier to get involved. So it's not necessarily a push from the brand. The suppliers want to be proactive. They've seen a number of different things out there in the marketplace. And this is an opportunity for them to be proactive, to demonstrate to those that they do source from for potential competitive advantage, an opportunity to demonstrate sustainability, performance, and improvement. That being said, I'm going to just move this slide. So For those of you who would like to connect with me, I'm happy to continue any conversations over email. So you have on the screen here is my email. So please feel free to reach out to me and we can continue the conversation. I will keep the line open for another probably few minutes. So if there's any questions, please go ahead and submit those. But for those on today, that will end the formal presentation. But again, I'll wait a few more moments in case there's additional questions coming in. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to any potential follow-ups that we might have. I wish everyone to stay healthy, remain healthy, and please enjoy the rest of your day. All right, there's one more question that's just come in around brands in this, I'm going to call it the length or number of suppliers they have in their supply chains in terms of, are we seeing significant shifts in that? And unfortunately, that's not something that we're necessarily exposed to in a lot of the conversation. So I can't comment on what we're seeing the brands do as it relates to downsizing or changing their supply chain. That's just not part of the work that we typically get involved in or have been exposed to in any brand conversations that we have. So unfortunately, I can't comment on that. All right, I will wait one more moment before ending today's webinar. So again, thank you for everyone who attended, and I wish you a great day. And with that, I am going to go ahead and end the webinar. Again, thank you, and I look forward to connecting with anyone.